wrote that, America was what you people today call the third world. No one had indoor plumbing or running water. Our leader, George Washington, was one of America's richest men, but even he had no teeth. He had to wear this painful-looking set of dentures. Only 3 million people lived here, and most of us were much poorer than our relatives in England. But then, protected by that, Americans tried new things, and in just a century, you made America the most prosperous country in the world. Why did that happen here? I say largely because of me and my colleagues, because we wrote a constitution that said there will be limits to government. We founders knew about British tyranny, so we understood the danger of big government. Thomas Jefferson said, "Trust no man with too much government power. Instead, bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution." Chains. Wish we had some chains to put on these guys now. What went wrong in 225 years? We thought we were quite clear about putting limits on eager politicians. James Madison wrote, "The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined." A few of my fellow delegates still voted against the Constitution, not because it was too radical, but because they feared it still left government too much power to limit individual freedom. One delegate wrote, "Conceiving as I did that the liberties of America were not secured by the system, it was my duty to oppose it." I disagreed, but I was happy 2 years later when, to make it clear that the rights lie with the people, not the government, we wrote a Bill of Rights. Some of us argued that that would be redundant. Alex Hamilton said, "Why declare that things shall not be done which there's no power to do? Why should it be said that the liberty of the press shall not be restrained when no power is given by which restrictions may be imposed?" But eventually we signed off on the Bill of Rights, and good thing we did, because now your politicians say government can do just about anything, except what is forbidden by the Bill of Rights. Still, the Constitution's limits have done you a lot of good. During the Korean War, steel workers threatened to go on strike, so President Truman nationalized the steel industry. Truman said it was okay because we're at war. But within 2 months, the Supreme Court ruled, well, I'll let Movie Tone tell it.
Their seizure by President Truman held illegal by the Supreme Court. The steel mills are returned to their private operators by the chief executive.
Good. Maybe that's what stopped Presidents Bush and Obama from nationalizing America's banks when the housing bubble burst, though they almost nationalized them. But the Constitution has slowed the growth of government. In 1895, Congress passed an income tax, but the Supreme said no, the Constitution does not give you the power to do that. The income tax was struck down. Wait a second, I have to pay income tax. I pay lots of income tax. Okay, but that's only because 20 years later, politicians in state legislatures and more than 2/3 of Congress managed to amend the Constitution to allow an income tax. That's why I say the Constitution at least slowed down big government. For a long time, the Supreme Court ignored the Second Amendment, but now they've started to enforce that too. 5 years ago, they ruled that individuals do have the right to keep and bear arms. Some places still haven't gotten the memo. John Stossel tried getting a legal permit to carry a gun, but officials said he hadn't proved a special need for it. They sent me a letter rejecting my application. That was in New York City, but Chicago and Washington, D.C. have been forced to change laws to honor the Second Amendment. So you should thank us for writing that and pay more attention to it. Then all of you could have what Thomas Jefferson promised, a wise and frugal government which shall leave men free to regulate their own pursuits. I wish that were true.